18 hours before the vanishing, the colony of New Hebron was preparing for its end. Marcus Webb stood on the observation platform of the colony's central tower, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. The twin moons were already visible, pale crescents against the darkening horizon. It was beautiful. He tried to memorize every detail. Behind him, the door hissed open. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Still admiring the view? Dr. Elena Vasquez asked, moving to stand beside him. Her voice was steady, but Marcus could hear the tension underneath. Seemed like a good time for it, Marcus replied. Last sunset and all. Elena was quiet for a moment. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun. She'd been New Hebron's chief scientist for 15 years, ever since they'd established the colony on this forgotten world. Marcus had been here for 10, serving as the settlement's administrator. The shelters are ready, Elena said finally. Not that they'll do much good against a Draconian bombardment fleet. No, Marcus agreed. But we had to try. Below them, the colony sprawled across the valley. 20,000 souls, most of them families, living in prefab structures and hydroponic domes. They'd come here because the Galactic Council had labeled this sector as abandoned, written it off as worthless. No strategic value, no resources worth claiming. They'd been wrong about that. 3 months ago, Elena's team had made a discovery in the ancient ruins that dotted the planet's surface. Ruins that predated every known civilization in the galaxy. Ruins that contained technology nobody understood. And 2 weeks ago, a Draconian scout ship had detected their energy signatures. The Empire had sent a message: surrender the technology and evacuate. Resistance would mean death. New Hebron had sent their own message back: come and take it. It had seemed brave at the time, defiant. Now, with the Draconian fleet scheduled to arrive in less than 12 hours, it seemed like suicide. Do you regret it? Elena asked. Telling them no? Marcus considered the question carefully. Ask me again in 12 hours. A younger man burst onto the platform, breathing hard. It was Thomas Park, their communications officer, and his face was flushed with excitement or fear. Marcus couldn't tell which. Sir. Ma'am, you need to see this right now. They followed Thomas to the communications center, a cramped room filled with equipment that was half modern technology and half salvaged junk. A dozen technicians were huddled around a central display, talking in rapid, urgent voices. Show them, Thomas said to one of the techs. The screen lit up with an image from their long-range sensors. At first, Marcus didn't understand what he was looking at. Then his brain made sense of the scale and his stomach dropped. Ships, dozens of them. The Draconian fleet had arrived early. How long until they reach orbit? Marcus asked, his voice surprisingly calm. That's just it, sir, Thomas said. They're already here. They dropped out of hyperspace 6 minutes ago. They should be in weapons range in 3 minutes. Then we need to— Wait! Elena interrupted, leaning closer to the screen. Something's wrong, she was right. Marcus could see it now. The fleet had emerged from hyperspace, but they weren't moving. They were just sitting there, hanging in space like toys suspended on invisible strings. Are they charging weapons? Marcus asked. No, sir. No energy signatures at all. They're just— The fleet vanished. One moment, 73 Draconian warships filled the sensors. The next, they were gone. Not destroyed, not jumping away, simply erased from existence as if they'd never been there at all. The communications center erupted in chaos. Techs shouted over each other, frantically checking their equipment. Thomas was pale, his hands shaking as he tried to recalibrate the sensors. Marcus and Elena stood frozen, staring at the empty space where an invasion fleet had been seconds ago. This isn't possible, Elena whispered. No, Marcus agreed. It's not. But it had happened anyway. The Galactic Council assembled in emergency session 32 hours after the vanishing. The council chamber was an enormous sphere, its walls made of translucent crystal that showed the stars beyond. Representatives from 27 different species sat in tiered seating that spiraled around the central speaking floor. Normally, the chamber buzzed with conversation, deals being struck in a dozen languages. Today, it was silent. Admiral James Kowalski stood on the speaking floor, a holographic display floating in front of him. He was a big man, barrel-chested and broad-shouldered, with short gray hair and a face weathered by 40 years of military service. He'd seen combat against pirates, put down rebellions, even fought in the brief war with the Zenthari Hive, but nothing in his career had prepared him for this. "Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed others," he began, his voice amplified through the chamber. 72 hours ago, the Draconian Empire dispatched their fourth conquest fleet to a human colony world designated New Hebron. The fleet consisted of 73 vessels, including 12 dreadnoughts, 35 cruisers, and 26 support craft. Total crew complement, approximately 48,000 Draconian soldiers and command staff. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. The fleet arrived at New Hebron on schedule. 6 minutes later, they disappeared. We have sensor data from the colony, from our own observation posts, and from 3 independent merchant vessels that happen to be in adjacent sectors. All confirm the same thing. The fleet vanished instantaneously with no energy discharge, no debris, and no distress signals. A chittering sound came from one of the upper tiers. Kowalski didn't speak Zarathian, but his translator rendered it as, "What of the Empire's response?" "The Draconian Empire has gone silent," Kowalski replied. "All communication channels are closed. Their borders are sealed. Our intelligence suggests they're mobilizing their remaining fleets, but for what purpose, we don't know." Another voice, this one deep and resonant, echoed through the chamber. "Ambassador Thulkar of the Borthan Union, a species that looked like bipedal bears made of living stone. Admiral, are you suggesting the humans have developed a weapon capable of destroying an entire fleet without a trace?" "I'm not suggesting anything, Ambassador. I'm presenting facts. What happened at New Hebron is beyond our current understanding of physics or technology." Thulkar's rocky face somehow managed to look skeptical. "How convenient. A human colony is threatened and miraculously the threat vanishes. Forgive me if I find this suspicious." Kowalski's jaw tightened. "If you're implying humanity orchestrated this, Ambassador, I'd ask you to consider the logic. We've shared every piece of sensor data we have. We've opened our research facilities to inspection. The colonists themselves were preparing for evacuation, not for some kind of secret weapon deployment." "Perhaps that is what they wanted everyone to believe," a new voice hissed. "Counselor Sreth of the Kalthari, a serpentine species known for their paranoia. Humans are young, reckless, they make dangerous allies." Before Kowalski could respond, another figure rose to speak. Counselor Arton of the Valkyr, a species that looked almost human except for their silver skin and pure black eyes. The Valkyr were old, their civilization stretching back millennia, and they were respected throughout the galaxy for their wisdom. "My colleagues raise valid concerns," Arton said, her voice melodious and calm, "but let us not forget history. The humans did not ask for this confrontation. The Draconian Empire has been expanding for centuries, swallowing world after world. Someone was bound to resist eventually." "Resistance is one thing," Thulkar rumbled. "Making an entire fleet disappear is quite another." "Which is precisely why we need to investigate," Arton continued. "Not to assign blame, but to understand. If there is a weapon capable of such destruction, we must know about it. If there is some other explanation, perhaps something relating to those ruins the humans discovered, we must know that too." The council dissolved into argument, different factions shouting over each other. Kowalski watched it all with grim satisfaction. They were scared, and scared people made mistakes. But they were also rational enough to understand that answers mattered more than accusations. Finally, the council chair called for order. She was a Zenthari, insect-like and delicate, but her authority was absolute. "This council authorizes a joint investigation," she declared. "Admiral Kowalski, you will lead a task force to New Hebron. The team will include representatives from all major powers. You will have full authority to examine the site, interview witnesses, and access any relevant data. You will report your findings in 30 standard days." Kowalski nodded. "Understood, Madam Chair." As the council session ended and representatives began to file out, Arten approached him. "Admiral, a word in private." They found a small antechamber off the main hall. Arten's black eyes studied him carefully. "You don't believe the humans did this," she said. "It wasn't a question." "No, Counselor, I don't. I've reviewed the data 20 times. Whatever happened out there, it wasn't a weapon. At least not any weapon I understand." "Then what do you think it was?" Kowalski was silent for a moment. "Honestly, I think we stumbled into something we weren't meant to find. Those ruins on New Hebron, they're older than any civilization in known space. What if they still had Defenses? Arton's expression was unreadable. A sobering thought, Admiral. Ancient technology, still active after millions of years. The question is, what triggered it? That's what I intend to find out. The investigation team arrived at New Hebron 5 days later. Marcus stood in the landing bay watching the shuttles descend. Elena was beside him along with Thomas and a security detail. The entire colony was on edge. Some people thought the investigators would arrest them. Others thought they'd be saved. Marcus didn't know what to think anymore. The first person off the lead shuttle was Admiral Kowalski, and Marcus found himself relieved. He'd met the Admiral once years ago at a conference on colonial development. Kowalski had struck him as a straight shooter, someone who cared more about truth than politics. Behind Kowalski came a diverse group, 3 humans in military uniforms, 2 Valkyr scientists, a Borthan security officer who barely fit through the shuttle door, and a Kalthari analyst whose eyes tracked everything with unnerving intensity. "Administrator Webb," Kowalski said, extending his hand. "Thank you for agreeing to cooperate with this investigation." "It's not like we have much choice, Admiral," Marcus replied, shaking his hand. "But for the record, we want answers as much as you do." "Then let's find them together. Dr. Vasquez, I presume?" He turned to Elena. "Yes, Admiral. I'm ready to show you the ruins whenever you'd like. No time like the present." They took ground vehicles to the excavation site, a 40-minute drive across rocky terrain. The ruins dominated the landscape, ancient structures of black stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The main structure was a pyramid, but its geometry was wrong. Angles that shouldn't connect, surfaces that seemed to shift when you looked at them directly. "How old are these ruins?" asked Dr. Mira Vossen, one of the Valkyr scientists. "We've dated some of the material to approximately 14 million years, Elena replied. "But that's a rough estimate. The construction methods are unlike anything in our databases. And you found active technology inside?" This from Commander Roth, the Borthan security officer. "Yes, power conduits still functioning, some kind of quantum computing system, and what we believe is a defensive network. We'd only scratched the surface before the Draconians showed up." The entrance to the pyramid was a triangular opening, perfectly smooth. Lights had been strung along the walls of the corridor beyond, but they did little to dispel the oppressive darkness. The air was cool and smelled of ozone. Marcus led them deeper into the heart of the structure. The walls were covered in symbols, not carved, but somehow grown into the stone itself. Some of them seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. "This is where it gets interesting," Elena said. They entered a vast chamber. In its center was a pillar of crystal, easily 20 feet tall and glowing with a soft blue light. Holographic displays floated around it, showing complex diagrams and equations that hurt to look at. "We activated this system 3 months ago," Elena explained. "Or more accurately, it activated itself when we entered the chamber. The displays show star charts, but they're old. Very old. Some of these stellar formations don't match current positions." Dr. Vossen approached the crystal pillar, her black eyes wide with wonder. "This is architect technology." Every head in the room turned toward her. "The architects?" Kowalski asked. "That's a myth." "No, Admiral. A hypothesis that has never been proven. Until now." Vossen's voice trembled with excitement. "The architects are theorized to be a species that existed millions of years ago, during the first expansion. They built structures across thousands of worlds, then disappeared. We've found traces of their work before, but never anything functional." "If this is their technology," Elena said carefully, "then they were far more advanced than we imagined. This system is tied into something bigger, a network that spans the entire sector, maybe the entire galaxy." "A defense network?" Roth asked. "We think so. Look here." Elena manipulated one of the holographic displays. It showed a map of local space with New Hebron at the center. "These points represent other ruins we've detected with long-range scans. They're positioned in a specific pattern, like watchtowers." "And when the Draconian fleet arrived?" Kowalski pressed. "The system activated automatically. We didn't do anything. We were in the shelter waiting to die, but the crystal started glowing brighter and then..." She trailed off. "And then the fleet vanished," Marcus finished. The Sereth analyst, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "You're suggesting this ancient defense system identified the Draconian fleet as a threat and eliminated it?" "I'm suggesting it did something to the fleet," Elena corrected. We don't know if they were destroyed or transported or... The crystal pillar pulsed, everyone jumped back. The holographic displays flickered and new images appeared. A ship, Draconian design unmistakable, but something was wrong with it.
The image kept glitching like a corrupted video file. Is that real-time data?
Kowalski demanded. Elena's fingers flew over a portable console she'd brought. I think so. It's showing us the flagship. The Imperator's Wrath. Where is it? The display zoomed out, showing a location marker. Everyone in the room went still. That can't be right, Marcus whispered. The ship was far away, not in another star system, not in another sector. It was in another dimension. The hologram showed a space that defied normal geometry. The Draconian flagship floated in a void where physics worked differently. Time was moving strangely. Marcus could see the crew moving in slow motion, frozen in the moment of their arrival. They're not destroyed, Dr. Vossen breathed. They're trapped. The architect's defense system didn't kill them. It removed them from our reality. Can we bring them back? Kowalski asked. Elena studied the displays, her face pale. I don't know, maybe. But Admiral, look at the power levels. The system used an enormous amount of energy to do this. It's drawing power from somewhere. Some kind of zero-point energy field we can barely detect. If we tried to reverse it, we might not succeed, Vossen finished. Or worse, we might trap ourselves along with them. The room fell silent. Everyone was processing the implications. An ancient defense system still active, capable of removing entire fleets from existence. And humanity had stumbled upon it by accident. We need to seal this chamber, Kowalski said finally, and we need to inform the Council immediately. This technology is too dangerous to leave accessible. Agreed, Roth rumbled. But what about the Draconians? Do we tell them their fleet still exists? Kowalski's expression was grim. We tell them the truth, all of it. And then we figure out if there's any way to fix this mess before it starts a war that could consume the entire galaxy. The Draconian response came 48 hours later. Marcus was in New Hebron's command center when the transmission arrived. It was audio only. The voice deep and growling translated from the Draconian language. This is War Leader Krasthor of the Draconian Empire. We have received your data on the fate of our Fourth Fleet. We acknowledge that the destruction was not caused by human weapons. Marcus felt a wave of relief. Maybe this wouldn't end in bloodshed after all. However, the voice continued, and Marcus's hope evaporated. 48,000 Draconian warriors remain trapped in your primitive defense system. They live in honor and they will die in honor. But they will not be abandoned. The Empire demands their release. You have 10 standard days to return our people. If you fail, we will consider it an act of war. The transmission ended. Elena slumped in her chair. 10 days. They're giving us 10 days to figure out technology that's been dead for 14 million years. Can we do it? Marcus asked. I don't know. Maybe. Dr. Vossen thinks she's found a way to interface with the system more directly, but it's risky. We could make things worse. Admiral Kowalski entered the command center, his face lined with exhaustion. He'd been coordinating with the Galactic Council, trying to manage what was rapidly becoming a crisis. The Council is divided, he said without preamble. Half want us to try to release the fleet. Half think we should leave well enough alone and let the Draconians make the first move. And if we do nothing, Marcus asked, then the Empire will attack. Not just New Hebron. They'll see this as humanity harboring a weapon against them. They'll strike at Earth, at every human colony, and with the fleet trapped, they're desperate enough to use their forbidden weapons. Planet crackers, biological warfare, things we hoped we'd never see used again. The weight of it settled over them. One small colony, one accidental discovery, and suddenly the fate of billions hung in the balance. There has to be another option, Elena said. There is, a new voice said. Everyone turned. Dr. Vossen stood in the doorway, her silver skin gleaming in the harsh lights. She looked tired but determined. I've been analyzing the architect technology, she continued. I think I understand its purpose now. The architects didn't just build a defense system. They built a deterrent, a way to remove aggressive species from the equation without destroying them. Explain, Kowalski ordered. Vossen pulled up a holographic display. The trapped fleet exists in a parallel dimension, yes, but it's not random. The dimension is a pocket reality, created specifically by the system. Inside, time moves much more slowly. To us, it's been days. To the Draconians on those ships, only minutes have passed. So they're in stasis? Marcus asked. Not exactly. They're conscious, aware, but frozen. Imagine being trapped in a single moment, unable to move forward or back. The architects designed it as punishment, a way to make aggressive species reconsider their actions. That's horrifying, Elena whispered. Yes, Vossen agreed. But it also means we can communicate with them. Kowalski leaned forward. How? The quantum entanglement that powers the system works both ways. If we can establish a stable connection, we could send a message to the trapped fleet. Let them see what happened. Make them understand. Understand what? Marcus asked. Vossen's black eyes were intense. That they're not prisoners. They're proof. Proof that the galaxy has defenses against conquest. Proof that some powers should not be challenged. If we can make the Draconians understand the true nature of the architect technology, that it exists throughout the galaxy, watching, waiting, then maybe we can convince them to change. Change the Draconian Empire? Roth's voice was skeptical. They've been conquerors for centuries, because they've never faced consequences that couldn't be overcome with more force. Vossen countered. But this is different. We're offering them a choice. Continue their expansion and risk triggering more ancient defenses or adapt. Join the galactic community as equals. Kowalski was quiet for a long moment. It's risky. If we fail, if they reject the offer, we've shown them we're not actually in control of the system. We're not in control of it, Elena pointed out. But they don't know that. Not for certain. Bluffing an entire empire, Marcus said. That's your plan? It's not a bluff if we believe it ourselves, Vossen replied. The architect technology is real. It did eliminate their fleet, and based on my scans, there are thousands of these sites across the galaxy. Faux dormant, but potentially active. We're not lying about the threat. We're just allowing them to draw their own conclusions about our level of control. Kowalski rubbed his face with both hands. This is insane. Yes, Vossen agreed. But it might be the only way to avoid a war that could kill billions. The Admiral looked at each of them in turn. Elena, Marcus, Roth. Finally, his gaze settled back on Vossen. All right, he said. Let's make contact. But if this goes wrong, if we trigger some kind of retaliation from the Draconians or accidentally make the situation worse, then we'll deal with it together. Marcus interrupted. That's what we do, isn't it? Face impossible situations and figure them out? Despite everything, Kowalski smiled. That's the human way, I suppose. Let's hope it's enough. 3 days later, they were ready. The chamber deep within the architect ruins was crowded. Admiral Kowalski stood beside Dr. Vossen and Elena, all of them watching the crystal pillar as it pulsed with increasing intensity. Around them, technicians monitored. Equipment that was half architect technology and half modern, science cobbled together in a desperate attempt to bridge millions of years of technological evolution. Marcus watched from a raised platform with the other observers, Thomas, Commander Roth, and several council representatives who'd arrived to witness this moment. They'd brought one more person, too, War Sage Thelkan of the Draconian Empire, their chief diplomat and one of the few Draconians willing to speak with other species as equals. Thelkan was massive, over 8 feet tall with dark green scales that looked like armor plating. His eyes were golden, reptilian, and they tracked every movement in the chamber with predatory focus. But there was intelligence there too, and something else, concern. Your scientists believe this will work? Thelkan asked, his voice a low growl that Marcus's translator rendered into comprehensible speech. They believe it's possible, Marcus replied carefully. Dr. Vossen has managed to establish a quantum link with the pocket dimension. We should be able to transmit audio and visual data. And if the connection destabilizes, then the fleet remains trapped and we're back where we started. Thelkan's claws flexed, a gesture Marcus had learned meant anxiety. War leader Krasthor is not a patient being. If this attempt fails, he will order an attack. I will not be able to stop him. We understand the stakes, War Sage. Below them, Elena's voice rang out. We're ready to attempt transmission. Everyone to safe positions. The crystal pillar flared bright blue. The holographic displays around it shifted and merged, forming a single massive image. At first it was chaotic. Fragments of the Draconian flagship's interior distorted and glitching. Then it stabilized. They were looking at the bridge of the Imperator's wrath. The Draconian crew stood frozen, locked in the moment of their arrival at New Hebron. Some were at their stations. Others were turning toward windows that showed the colony world below. All of them were trapped in time, their movements impossibly slow. "Can they hear us?" Kowalski asked. "Establishing audio link now," Elena replied. A moment later, sound filled the chamber. At first, it was just ambient noise from the bridge, the hum of engines, the beep of consoles. Then slowly, voices emerged. Draconian voices speaking in their guttural language. "I see something's wrong. Systems not responding. Well, where are we?" The voices were stretched out, distorted by the time differential. But they were conscious, aware. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "They're experiencing this in real time," Dr. Vossen said quietly. "To them, only minutes have passed since they arrived. But those minutes are subjectively much longer. Every second is an eternity." "Then let's not waste any more of their time," Kowalski said. "Open a channel." Elena nodded, and suddenly the crystal pillar began projecting Kowalski's image into the pocket dimension. On the holographic display, they could see the effect. The Admiral's figure appearing on the flagship's main view screen, visible to the trapped crew. "This is Admiral James Kowalski of the Galactic Defense Forces," he began, speaking slowly and clearly. "You have not been destroyed. You have been removed from normal space by an ancient defense system. Your fleet triggered automated protocols designed to prevent aggression against protected worlds." On the display, they could see the Draconian crew reacting. Their movements were still slowed, but gradually speeding up as the quantum link strengthened. One figure moved toward the front of the bridge, the fleet commander, war leader Krasthor himself. Even trapped and time-delayed, Krasthor was intimidating. He was larger than the other Draconians, with scales that were almost black and scars crisscross his face, his eyes fixed on Kowalski's image with pure fury. "Human." Krasthor's voice boomed, distorted but understandable. "You dare imprison warriors of the Empire? This is an act of war." "We did not imprison you, war leader," Kowalski replied calmly. "The defense system activated automatically when you approached New Hebron. We had no control over it. Then release us. Now, we're working on it, but there's something you need to understand first." Kowalski paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "The system that trapped you is ancient. Older than the Empire. Older than any civilization currently in the galaxy. It was built by a species called the Architects, and it still functions after 14 million years." Krasthor's expression didn't change, but other Draconians on the bridge looked uncertain. "The colony on New Hebron discovered ruins," Kowalski continued. "They activated a single node in what we believe is a galaxy-wide network. There are thousands of these sites, war leader. Thousands. Most are dormant, but they all have the same purpose: to prevent conquest, to stop species that expand through force." He let that sink in before continuing. "The Draconian Empire has conquered hundreds of worlds. You've built your power through superior strength and ruthless tactics. But now you face something you can't intimidate. You can't outfight. The Architect's technology doesn't care about your military might. It simply removes threats. You threaten the Empire?" Krasthor growled. "No, war leader. We're warning you. The galaxy has defenses you never knew existed. Continue your expansion, and you'll trigger more of these systems. Lose more fleets, more warriors trapped in places like this, outside normal space, outside time. Is that the fate you want for your people?" Silence fell over both chambers, the one in the ruins and the one on the trapped flagship. Marcus held his breath. Finally, Krasthor spoke again. "What do you propose, human?" "Peace, not surrender, peace. The Galactic Council is prepared to offer the Draconian Empire full membership. Equal standing with all other species. Trade agreements. Cultural exchange. An end to hostilities. In return, you cease territorial expansion and withdraw from contested worlds." "The Empire does not withdraw," Krasthor snarled. "Then the Empire dies slowly, fleet by fleet, as you trigger ancient defenses across the galaxy." Kowalski shot back. "Is pride worth extinction?" Beside Marcus, Warsage Thelkin leaned forward, his golden eyes fixed on the display. He made a gesture, a sign in Draconian body language that meant something like truth spoken in battle. A sign of respect. On the flagship, Krasthor was silent for a long moment. Around him, his crew waited. Finally, the war leader's shoulders slumped slightly. a gesture of acceptance that looked strange on such a massive creature. "Speak with the Empress," he said. "If she agrees to these terms, the fleet will honor them. But human, Admiral Kowalski, we expect our warriors to be released. All of them, alive. We'll do everything we can," Kowalski promised. "Dr. Vossen, can we stabilize the connection and begin transfer protocols?" "Already working on it, Admiral," Elena called up. "But it's going to take time. Days, maybe weeks, to safely extract all 73 ships." "Then we begin now," Kowalski said. He turned back to the display. "War Leader Krasthor, War Sage Thelkon is present with us. He'll coordinate with your crew to facilitate the extraction process." Thelkon stepped forward, speaking in his native language. Marcus's translator rendered it, but he could hear the emotion underneath. Relief, maybe even hope. The image flickered and stabilized. The connection was holding. Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Elena was grinning despite her exhaustion. Even Commander Roth looked pleased. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd found a way to turn disaster into possibility. But as Marcus watched the crystal pillar pulse with ancient power, he couldn't help but wonder about the beings who'd built all this. The architects. What had they been like? Why had they disappeared? And most importantly, were they really gone, or were they somewhere out there watching to see if the younger species would learn from their warnings? Questions for another day, Marcus decided. For now, they had a fleet to rescue and a peace to build. It was enough.